Hi, today we're going to cover marginal costing, which is part of the cost accounting chapter. In marginal costing chapter, again we are talking about future, where we are dividing the cost into two, and again our objective is to find the profit. So cost we are dividing into variable and fixed. This is based on behavior, right? So what does variable cost mean? If the cost varies with the proportion of the output, that means variable cost. Let's say if we have 10 rupees for 1 unit and again 20 rupees for 2 units, that is where it change in proportion. So that is what we call variable cost. That is just the definition, and you should know the basic you should have the basic understanding of what variable cost mean and what fixed cost mean. So variable cost is varies in proportion with output, and fixed cost not affected with the change in output. So if we increase the output, still the fixed cost won't change. So important point which you have to apply in the question, which you have to check in the question, is output. So what is output? For an example, let's say for first day I have cost of 500. Second day I have cost of 500 again. So that is not variable cost, because day is not my output. Output should be a product. Output should be what they are asking, what the question is and stuff. So that point is important. Why? Because if it changes with the days or weeks or something, that should not be considered as a variable cost, for an example, right? So this point. So if a cost varies with the output, so what is output? What we are getting from the, let's say if you are producing a product, the product is output, right? So if you are doing a service, the service is the output. So if you are, let's say if you are running a vehicle, a cab service, the kilometers it runs is the output. So that is the output. So base, right? So variable cost is like based on the output, right? It is not about something else, not about days, not about weeks and stuff. So that point is important when you're doing the question. So this is the first part, right? So what is our target, what is our objective, is to find the profit. So let's say like we put like this, profit equals to sales minus total cost. Profit means the net profit, right? Profit means the net profit. So can we say like this? Yes, right? Because profit equals to the total sales or total income minus the total cost, because I'm just trying to get the net profit, right? So this is the basic equation, right? So there's no issue with this equation, because this is how we are finding the profit. Here I can say like this, right? The profit, again I can say a profit equals to sales. Since I am dividing the cost into variable and fixed, I can say sales minus variable cost and the fixed cost, right? Because the total cost equals to variable cost and fixed cost. So I can say like this as well. In this chapter, in marginal costing chapter, which is one of the traditional cost accounting, we are dividing the cost into two. So we are not considering about whether it is production or non-production. We are just considering whether it is fixed or variable. It can be production, it can be non-production as well. Clear? So because of that, I just put the formula. Like this: total sales minus variable cost and fixed cost. The total of these equals to profit. Clear? So this is the first part where we know already right? Which one we normally this is what we are, this is how we are finding profit, but we are not preparing any income statement like we are not dividing admin, sales, selling and distribution, finance and all. We are just dividing into fixed cost and the variable cost. And you should know the exact meaning of variable cost and the fixed cost, because when they give me a question in marginal costing chapter, you should know to differentiate the variable cost and the fixed cost based on output. Output mean in accounting, in your question, what they are requesting in the requirement, they would say like for this number of units or something. So that is what the output is, right? So this is a basic thing. Clear? Right. So this is the equation we studied, the basic equation. Profit equals to total sales minus total cost. Total cost I divided into two, variable cost and the fixed cost. So I got this formula and I prepared an income statement based on the formula. So this is the income statement format for marginal costing chapter. So you are okay with the income statement, right? Because sales, I deducted the variable cost and then I deducted the fixed cost, then I got my profit, which is the net profit. Now I am going to introduce a word called contribution, right? So generally contribution is something this is what we call as contribution. There's no definition for contribution other than like we can say total sales minus total variable cost. There's no proper definition like why it is called as contribution. So contribution simply defines the total sales minus total variable cost. So this is contribution. So first, this is the first point. So you have profit equation, then from that I got a income statement format. So in income statement format, I introduced the word contribution. So this is my first point, and my second point is contribution. Right. So contribution is what? Simply total sales or total income minus total variable cost. So under contribution, we are having two, I would say A and B. A is contribution per unit and B is total contribution, right? So what is total contribution? So that is what we studied, or that is what we learned from this income statement, right? From total sales, if you deduct the total variable cost, you will get the contribution. These are total because we are doing the income statement for the total, not for a unit, right? So this is the total contribution. So I would say for the total contribution, I would say total sales or income minus total variable cost, right? So total sales minus total variable cost. Do we have any other method or any other equation to find the same contribution in the income statement? So we found like this, right? Total sales minus total variable cost, and we got this answer. Is there any other way to find the same answer? The total contribution. We can do like this, right? If you are finding in this way from top to bottom, so we arrived at contribution here. So if we do so, then we can go in this way and find the same answer. So total contribution equals to total sales minus total variable cost, or we can say profit. So when you are going, from bottom to top, you have to add back, right? So profit plus total fixed cost. Clear? So I got the equation. We are not memorizing the equation. I just got the equation from the income statement I just prepared. So I'm not memorizing the equation or the formula for the contribution. So that depends on you again, but you can easily get it from the income statement itself. From where I got the income statement? From this equation. So what is that equation? That is the basic equation to find the profit. Profit equals to total sales or total income minus total cost. Based on the cost behavior in this chapter, we are dividing the total cost into fixed and variable. That is why I'm having equation like this. From that, I prepare the income statement. From income statement, I introduce the word called contribution, and I found the contribution. Now, contribution per unit. So if I can get the total contribution, how to get the contribution per unit? What is the easiest way to find it? If I get the total in value or in rupees, if you get something like that, in any situation, any question, if you have the total, and if they ask for a unit, how to find it, this total should be divided by the units, right? So that is the easiest way, right? So that is one of the way to find the contribution per unit. But what is the equation? The equation is selling price minus variable cost per unit. So selling price also per. So if I have the selling price per unit and if I have the variable cost per unit, so that is my contribution per unit. Because if I get an equation like this, total sales minus total variable cost equals total contribution, and if I have my selling price per unit and variable cost per unit, then I can get the same answer, which is contribution per unit. So can we find the same answer using profit per unit plus fixed cost per unit? Can't. Why? Because fixed cost is for total. We can't find fixed cost for a unit. So this is the first point, the profit equation. I got the what you call income statement. Then I introduced the word contribution. Contribution, we have contribution per unit and total contribution. First I introduced total contribution because that is easier to understand from the income statement format. Then I gave this one, which is contribution per unit. So if you are finding for a unit, then you have to have everything for a unit. So selling price per unit, variable cost per unit. So here we have two equations for the total contribution, but for the contribution per unit we don't have two equations. Why? Because fixed cost we can't find for a unit. Fixed cost we can't find for a unit. Now tell me, the sales, how we got the sales normally? So total sales is this much, right? How to get it? This total sales I can say like this. I can say quantity into selling price, right? This total variable cost, again I can say quantity into variable cost per unit. I would say per unit. So selling price also per unit, right? So we can say like that, right? So sales we got from this and variable cost we got from this. Clear? We can get the same answer because quantity, that is what we know, right? Because if someone asks you the sales, or if someone asks you what is the total sales, we would say, okay, you have 10 quantity and your selling price is 50, so 10 into 50, 500 is your total sales, right? Simple as that. Variable cost also the same thing, because variable cost we know for the unit. So if we multiply by the quantity, we get the total variable cost. Clear? First point, second point, and the third point. So I introduced the word contribution, right? From that I am saying something called contribution sales ratio. Contribution sales ratio. So from the word itself we have the answer, contribution sales then ratio. So I would say contribution sales into 100, right? C over S into 100. So if I put total C here, I should put total sales. If I put contribution per unit here, I have to put sales per unit, because you can't match contribution per unit with the total sales, right? Because if we are using per unit one, you have to use per unit for all these values to get the correct answer, right? So contribution over S, contribution over sales into 100. So what does that mean? What does that mean? Let's say this is 10,000. My sales is 10,000 and my variable cost is 4,000. What is my contribution? 6,000. So if I put that in equation, how to do? Contribution is 6,000. This is 10,000 into 100 means 60%. So what does that mean now? Your contribution is 60% on your sales, right? So 60% is your contribution on your sales. So what is 40% then? If 60% is contribution, 40% is what? Variable cost. That is additional point where you should understand, you can learn and you can apply that. Like if they give contribution sales ratio, let's say 70% or let's say 60%, the remaining 40% should be variable cost according to the basic maths. Why? Because I deduct 40 and got this, right? So this should be the remaining percentage. So if this is 60%, the remaining would be the variable cost. So contribution sales ratio, C over S. So I would say here, this could be total sales, total contribution, or contribution per unit, right? So if we are using total contribution, then sales also you had to use a total, right? You can't use other way around. So this could be total sales or selling price per, right? C over S into 100. So the important point here, what we learned is, for an example, if CS ratio is 60%, then 40% is what? Variable cost. So that is the third point. Contribution sales ratio. So that is just a ratio we are using. They will give it. So I'm going to use this later, but you should know how to find it. So C is contribution, S is sales. If you are using per unit C, then you have to use a per unit S, right? And if you're using total, you have to use total. If you know the contribution sales ratio, and if it is 60%, the remaining should be the variable cost. Clear? For the contribution sales ratio, they have another word called profit volume ratio. So there's no relation actually. Like why, I don't know why they are using the word profit volume ratio, but that is another word they are using for the contribution sales ratio, or we can say sales contribution ratio, either way, right? So this is the other word they are using according to the syllabus. So we are having another word for the contribution sales ratio as well. So this is the equation. So if this is my equation according to maths, I can say this like delta C over delta S into 100. if C over S into 100, if you get some percentage, if you could be able to, if you could be able to manage, if you could be able to find delta C, which is change in C, right? Delta C is change in C. Let's say 10,000 unit this much, 20,000 unit this much, so that's a change in C, right? So if you could be able to get it, then that is delta C over delta S into 100 could be the same answer. Others are constrained, that's not changing. So I'm gonna check this equation with an example, because I can't blindly say like C over S into 100, we can just put delta C over delta S into 100 instead of this, right? So I'm gonna test this equation and show you, okay, we are fine to use this equation, right? So let's say an example, my selling price is 10 and my variable cost per unit is 6, which won't change, right? And my units 1000 and 2000. So I will have fixed cost also. So I'm gonna prepare the income statement here, right? So if it is okay, let's say this is 20, then it will be easy. Yeah, right. So 20 and 6, and my fixed cost is, which won't change with the units. So my fixed cost is, let's say 6,000, like let's say 40,000. Here also it is 40. So I'm gonna prepare two income statement here to explain this equation, and I'm gonna get some, further some output from the working I'm gonna do. Fine. So what is my sales now? Units is 1000 now, so 20,000, right? Oops. So let's say this is 10,000. This is 20,000. So let's say this is 200,000, and 10,000 into 20, 200. Yeah, and this is 400,000. This is 10,000 units. This is 20,000 units. Not 1,000, 2,000, right? Clear? So this is 10,000. This is 20,000. For 10,000, my selling price is 20. So 20 into 10,000, 200,000. And my variable cost is how much? 60,000. Here, 1, right? So this is 140. This is 120, mean 2. And this is 100. And this is 2. So this is just an example. I put my selling price as 20. I'm just trying to find my profit for 10,000 units and the 20,000 units. 10,000 units, like 10,000 into 20 my sales, 10,000 into 6 my variable cost. I have the fixed cost which won't vary with these units. So I arrive at 100,000 and 240,000. So now I'm gonna use this. Okay, let's say I'll use this. For C, how much? If I take this part, what is my C? 140,000 and divided by 200 into 100, right? So you get some answer. How much? I think 70. Yeah. How 70? 140 is 70% of 200,000, right? Again, 280 is 70% of 400,000. Fine. Therefore, my 30% should be the variable cost. So 200,000, 30%, how much? 60,000. Fine, right? Because this is 60,000, which is 30%. Why 30%? Because if my contribution is 70%, 30% should be what? Variable cost. Fine. So I'm gonna apply here. What is my change in C? Again, my change in C is how much? This to this, right? 140 divided by my change in sales is how much? This to this, 200 to 400, right? So again, this is again 200. So if I divide, I get the same answer, right? So what is the another important point you learned from this? which I haven't discussed yet. What is the other point? Here, my C was 140 at the units of 10,000 and 280 at the units of 20,000, right? Look at this. Look at the profit. This is C, right? This is C. This is profit. C means contribution, right? Okay. So profit was 100,000 and now the profit is how much? 240,000, right? So what is the learning from that? If fixed cost is not changed, yes, we should not change, because fixed cost means what? Should not change or should not vary with the number of output, right? So if it is not changed, my delta C, not C, right? This delta C, my change in C equals to change in profit here. My change in C equals to change in profit. My change in C equals to change in profit. Therefore, I can write like this now. Delta C or delta profit over delta S. Either one of it, right? If you use delta profit, you get the same answer. If you use delta C, again you get the same answer. So my learning from this is the equation, and this is the learning. If 60 is CS ratio, then 40 is variable cost. And again I can use another equation, which is delta profit or delta contribution over delta S means sales into 100. So my learning is what? Delta profit equals to delta contribution. Right? So now can we say profit equals to contribution? No. It is delta contribution equals to delta profit, because if you see this example, profit is not equal to C, right? Profit won't be equal to C. That's totally different things. But delta in the sense change in the contribution equal to change in the profit. So this is a learning. So in this contribution sales ratio, which we can say as profit volume ratio as well, we have CS ratio, C over S into 100. If you are using unit cost, unit contribution, you have to use unit sales into 100. If you are using total contribution, you have to use total sales into 100. Fine. The other equation is delta C over delta S into 100. Delta C, we can use delta profit also, because delta C equals to delta profit. So this is the point. These are the equation and these are the learning. So I have explained the income statement. From the income statement, I have introduced total contribution, then unit contribution. Total contribution, we have two equations. Why? Because from the income statement, we can arrive at in both ways, top to bottom and bottom to top, right? So we have two equations. Total contribution equals to total sales minus total variable cost, or profit plus total fixed cost. But unit contribution, you don't have two. Why? Because you can't find the fixed cost for a unit. So unit contribution equals to unit selling price minus unit variable cost. So that is the second point. Third point is contribution sales ratio. The equation, the word itself, we have the answer. Contribution sales ratio, contribution divided by the sales into 100. So that's the first equation. Then if you are using contribution common word, right? So if you are using per unit contribution, you have to use selling price per unit. If you are using total contribution, you have to use total sales. This point. So if you find the contribution sales ratio as 60%, you should know 40% variable cost. This we can apply in MCQ questions. No one will ask you what is your percentage in the percentage of variable cost. But if you know that, then you can apply for the MCQs. So that is fine. Then I put this equation where delta C over delta S. Delta C means change in C. Delta C equals to what? Delta profit. How? We have the example. So we got the answer from this only, right? So whatever units you put, if fixed cost is not changed, because that is constraint, that should not change. Fixed cost means the cost which is not changing with the number of units, right? So it won't change anyway. So if that happens, that is the normal scenario. If the normal scenario, the change in contribution equals to change in profit, it doesn't mean contribution equals to profit. contribution is different thing, profit is different thing. Fine. So before we go into the depth, I'll give a question to understand and apply what we studied until now. The basic things to prepare the income statement, to differentiate the variable cost and fixed cost, and to find the contribution as well. So you do the question, I share the answers as well, so you can check after we're done with the question. Right. So in the question I have shared, I gave variable cost and fixed cost. So variable cost, the important point is you have to find for an output, not for days, right? So if they give for a day, you have to find for a unit, right? So from that, you should know how to find profit using the income statement, that is basic. And contribution, so there's a new word, and contribution we have total and the unit contribution, then CS ratio. Fine. So the fourth point is break even point. We would say BEP, break even point. Right. So what does break even point means? When a business starts, like for our first 6 or 7 months, they wanted to run the business without loss, and they are fine, they are okay to have no profit, no loss, because at the initial stage they are just launching their product. So they are fine, or they want to find how many units they have to sell to run the business without a profit or loss. So that is what we call break-even point. So break-even point, the number of units a business has to sell to run the business without a profit or loss. Because when they are starting a business, they should calculate this to understand, okay, this number of units they have to sell to run the business without a loss, right? So later they will have their marketing strategy to to have more sales and to make more business, right? So that is what we call break-even point, right? So break-even point means no profit, no loss, right? Means what? So if we put this like profit equals to total sales minus total cost, right? So profit is 0, right? At the level of break-even point. So if I am selling 1000 units, I would say, okay, there's no profit or loss if I sell 1000 units, right? So what else we can say? So if profit is 0, so this is 0, right? It means your total cost equals to total sales, right? Or total income. So break-even point means profit is 0, or we can say total sales equals to total cost, because then only you get the profit as 0. Fine. Now we have to calculate, or there's a formula to calculate the break-even point. That is one part of the question. For this only, I explained you contribution, what does contribution mean, and all the other things like the first 3 points. Fine. So break-even point means no profit, no loss. Break-even point means this is 0. So I would say no profit, no loss. Or I can say my income is equals to total cost, because at this point only your profit is 0. There's a formula for it to find the break-even point units, and I'm going to explain you like how they got that formula. That is not needed for A-level. If you know the formula, you can do the question, find the answers, but there should be a reason, there should be a way how they arrived at that formula, right? Fine. So this is the basic equation or basic formula we know, because profit equals to total sales minus total cost. So I'll put like this, right? Profit equals to sales minus total variable cost TVC, and I would say plus total fixed cost, right? Sales. So sales equals to what? So how to find sales? As I explained earlier, sales is what? Your selling price into quantity, right? So profit is 0. So selling price into quantity is sales. So what is variable cost? What is how to find total variable cost? Again, variable cost per unit into quantity, right? So how to find fixed cost? The fixed cost, it is anyway total. It is not related to the quantity. So you have to put the total. So why I put minus here? Because this minus, so this is in bracket, right? So this minus into plus is minus. Fine. You have to find number of units for break-even point, means this number of units you have to sell to get no profit, no loss. Fine. Right. So what we can do then? So we need the answer in quantity, right? So what I can do is, so I can take quantity out from this Q and selling price minus variable. So I can put it like this, right? Because quantity, this one is selling price into quantity, and this one is again quantity into variable cost is this part, plus minus where total fixed, right? So I need the answer in quantity, so I have to keep quantity in one side and I have to move all others to the other side. How to do that? So I'll keep quantity this side and I'll move total fixed cost. So that is in minus, so it will be like this, right? So from this side, and I move into the side, it will be plus, right? So how to remove this? So it is, Q multiplied by this. To remove, what you have to do? You have to divide. So when you are dividing this side, you have to divide. Let's say I'll keep like this: selling price minus variable cost. So the next step, total fixed cost. Here I gonna divide this by selling price minus variable cost. So this side also I have to divide, right? Then I arrive at the answer, TFC over, this is selling price in the sense unit selling price, because this is total, so unit selling price. This VC also unit VC, then you get the total VC using this way. So selling price minus VC, selling price minus variable cost, what is it? Or unit selling price minus unit variable, what is it? This is unit contribution, right? So equals to Q. So what is Q? Q is the BEP in this formula, because I put 0 for the profit, right? So this is how we arrive at the equation formula for the BEP, but you don't really need like how we are finding BEP, but you should know this formula, right? Fine. Let's do this in a mathematical way, right? So let's have the income statement somewhere here, right? So what is the income statement format for the margin of costing? Here sales, then you have TVC, total variable cost, then you are deducting TFC and you get the profit, right? So here I'll minus this and again I deduct this, then I get the profit. So in this part, what is your profit? The profit is 0. So what you have to find? You have to find the quantity, right? So tell me, right, let's say this is TFC, right? So tell me how to write sales. We can write like what? Selling price into quantity. Again, this one is variable cost into quantity. So selling price into quantity, variable cost into quantity. What is this? Contribution, total contribution. How to write that? Contribution per unit into quantity, right? The contribution into units, right? Contribution into quantity minus TFC equals to profit 0. So same thing I did here. So you can find the answer using this income statement format as well, because your requirement is finding quantity. They will give selling price, they will give variable cost, they will give fixed cost. So if you fill it, let's say for an example, they give selling price 10 and variable cost 6. So how to write this? Your selling price is 10, Q only you had to find, right? So 10Q. How to write the total variable cost? Your variable cost, let's say 6. So variable cost is 6. Q only you had to find, so Q is Q, right? So 10Q minus 6Q. So this is how much? 4Q. So 4Q, they have to give the total fixed cost, let's say 50,000. So how we can say 4Q minus 50,000 equals to 0. Then you can do the changes, you can make Q as subject, and you can find the answer. So that is one of the way to find, but the easiest way to find is the equation. This is just once you're done with the question, and if you have any doubts, you can always test using this income statement format, whatever the question it is. If they ask you to find selling price is the question, you can fill all the other things and you can find. If they ask you to find the variable cost per unit, you can fill all other things and you can find the variable cost. So this is just a module or a way to check your answers whether it is correct or wrong. But the way you're going to find the answer in the exam, because if you do it in this way, and if you're trying to find the answer in this way, and if you're showing that in your answer, they won't give the marks, because this is not about accounting. So in accounting, they are using the formula to find the answer. This is just to test, just to check whether your answer is correct by yourself, right? So yeah, so we got this formula now, right? So break-even point means what is the quantity you have to sell for no profit, no loss. Means your total sales should equal to total cost, because your profit is 0. So we have the formula to find it. So this is the formula, and how we found the formula from this. And also you can use the income statement for any type of question, right? So break-even point, first one in units, right? So BEP units equals to TFC, which is total fixed cost, divided by the unit contribution, not the total contribution, right? You are divided by the unit contribution. You are familiar with the words, right? TFC, TVC, SP, and sales is sales, and TFC means total fixed cost, TVC means total variable cost, SP means selling price, sales is sales, right? So those are the just words you should know. Fine. So unit in units, to find the answer, this is the formula. B in value. So I'm going to say BEP in, or BEP value. So TFC divided by the unit contribution. So what is this? You'll get the answer in quantity. To make it value, what do you have to do? Whatever it is, like if you get something in quantity, to make it as a sales value, what to do? You have to multiply by selling price. So into selling price. right? Now tell me, this formula in maths, how else we can, like what is the other way to write this? So TFC we know, unit contribution we know, selling price I multiply to get in the value, because whatever is given the units, to get it to the value, you have to multiply by the selling price. So what is the other formula we can derive from this, or we can get from this? Can I say like this? So TFC is still TFC. This is unit contribution, right? So C, selling price I put here. Instead of that, can I put here like this? According to the maths, I mean just asking, like whether we can put like that. Yes, right. Let's say this is 10,000 some value, right? Like this. How to do this in maths? 10,000 divided by 10 over 4. How to do that? 10,000 like this, right? Then what do you do? 10,000 into 4 over 10, right? This is how we do, right? The same thing. So what does this mean? TFC over C over S means CS ratio. Let's say CS ratio is 40%. You will put 0.4 here, not 40, because this is CS, like C over S only, right? So we normally say this as CS ratio, but important point here is, right, for an example, if CS ratio, which is contribution sales ratio, we can say profit volume ratio as well. Not profit sales ratio, not profit ratio, it is profit volume ratio, because profit sales ratio means what? Profit over sales, right? Gross profit over sales or net profit over sales, which you studied in the accounting ratio. This is profit volume ratio. So let's say if CS ratio, contribution sales ratio is 40%. Here, I don't put 40%, I have to put 0.4, not 40%. That is important. What will happen is you put 40 there, then you get the wrong answer, right? So how I got it? Again from this. If you just think in a way like, okay, how we arrive it, or if you forget it, then you can just, move this somewhere here and get the answer. So why we are having two formulas then? In some question, they won't give you unit contribution. They will straight away give you, okay, this is your contribution sales ratio. So if they give contribution sales ratio, then you should know a way to find the answer, right? So you can directly use that and find it. And when you are putting this, when you are trying to get this answer, you have to put like this. If it is 40%, 0.4, if it is 60%, 0.6, like that. So that is important point. So break-even point, we have units in value, units and value. In units, this is a formula. And value, we have two formulas. Why we have two formulas? Because we are multiplying by selling price. So instead of this, we can put like this as well according to the normal maths, right? So this is how we normally do in our maths, right? So from that, they just put this formula. So for this reason only, so I explained you about CS ratio and stuff. Fine. Right. So that is about the EP, the fourth point. Now tell me, the same thing, same scenarios. So I just want to find, okay, I just want to find with the profit of 10,000, what is my quantity? Like if I want to earn 10,000 profit, what is my quantity? I want to find it. So how to put here? How we can fill this? I'll put 10,000 here, right? Profit is 10,000. What is my question? The question is what? How many units we have to sell, right? So Q is the question. We have to fill everything and we have to find the answer. How to find from this? I'll put 10,000 here, right? Instead of 0, because I'm going to make profit of 10,000 and I need to find the number of units for 10,000 units. I put 10,000 here and put the same thing and find the answer. So how this formula gonna change now? So I have 10,000, I have profit still. I have still profit here. Here also I gonna have profit, right? So TFC plus profit, because profit is still there. So why I remove profit in the this formula, the BEP formula? Because profit is 0. Now I gonna have profit because I need to find the quantity for some profit to make some profit, right? So profit I'll put some value. So if I gonna put some value, you have to keep that. Here I just remove this because 0 doesn't make any sense, right? So if you have the profit, TFC plus profit here, right, again here, that is the fifth one. So there's no major changes. If you have profit, if they give or if they ask you to find number of units in this profit, or like for this profit, you have to use the exact same formula like for break-even point, but you will add profit there. Why you have to add profit there? Because there is some profit. Early in break-even point, there's no profit. So the fifth one, this is fourth one, right? The fifth one, same thing, as like same as break-even point, like I would say to with profit. Let's say with profit, right? So if like with the profit, or if we want to find the quantity number of units with the profit, right? So same thing. So to find A in units, equation TFC plus profit. Here I'm gonna add profit because we have profit. Earlier also something is there, but that is 0, right? So plus profit, again divide by same thing, unit contribution. So B in value, TFC plus profit, divide by what? Unit contribution into selling price, or unit selling price, or what? Or I would say TFC plus profit divided by CS ratio, right? So this is the fifth one. Again, whatever the question they ask, you have a method to find using the income statement. I'll explain that also when I'm doing the question, because when you have some issue with the question, when you couldn't be able to find the answer from some question, it is the easiest way to fill it and get the answer, right? So this is the fifth point. The same equation, same formula, if they ask you, let's say, to get 50,000 profit, how many units you have to sell, right? So at that point you have to use this equation. Fine. So the next one, which is the sixth formula set, is margin of safety, right? So what does margin of safety means? So margin of safety means, let's say your break-even point is 10,000 units and you are planning to sell 15,000 units, your expected selling units. So the gap between expected selling units and the break-even point is what you call the margin of safety unit. So how to find margin of safety value then? If you have something in units and if you want to convert that into value, what you have to do? You have to multiply by selling price, right? So margin of safety doesn't mean profit. It is the gap between the selling units and the break-even point. Why it is not actually mean profit? Because that is just a gap, right? Still we have some expense. I'll explain in the next formula, right? So margin of safety, what you should understand, is the gap between the selling units and the break-even point, and it is not profit. It is not profit. Let's say your break-even is 10,000 and you are selling 15,000. So you are selling 5,000 additionally compared to break-even. Mean break-even is the no profit, no loss point, right? So you are selling 5,000. So 5,000 into selling price is your profit? No, right? Because in that 5,000 units, it still have some variable cost. I explained the next formula, right? So you should understand that margin of safety into selling price is not profit. So margin of safety, first one is units equals to expected selling units minus break-even point units, right? Then second one, margin of safety in value, we can find like this, right? Expected selling units, which they will give in the question, minus break-even point units, right? This into selling price, because when you get some answer in units and if you want to convert to the value, you have to multiply by selling price. How else we can tell this formula? If we have expected selling value, how to find that? Let's say your expected selling units is 15,000 and your selling price is 10. So 150,000 is your expected selling value, right? That minus BEP value, also you get the same answer, right? So here you can put units, then you can multiply by selling price, or else you can put the value itself. Fine. And the third one, percentage, I would say margin of safety percentage, right? So what is the equation? What is the formula for just gross profit percentage? Gross profit divided by sales into 100. So what could be the equation or formula for margin of safety percentage? Margin of safety percentage equals to margin of safety, right? You can put units or value divided by expected selling units. So again the same thing, if you put units on the top, you have to put the units. If you put value on the top, you have to put the value, right? You can't compare units with the value. So right, so that is important. Where I discussed this in the CS ratio. If you put C for the unit, you have to put the S also for a unit. We put the total C, you have to put the total S, right? Same as that. So margin of safety, I would say here units, right, divided by expected selling units into 100. So there are three formulas we do have under margin of safety. First point, you should know margin of safety is not your profit. Why? Because it is just a gap between the BEP and the expected selling. There is something called variable cost, which is always associated with the product, with the number of units you are selling. Therefore, you can't come for a decision that margin of safety equals to what you call, you can't come for a decision that margin of safety equals to profit. Fine. So there are three equations: units, value and percentage. Percentage is very rarely the test. But if they give in MCQ, from that you should know to find others. The thing is, like, it is not must for them to ask, okay, what is your margin of safety units? They can give the margin of safety units, right? And let's say in this formula, if they give margin of safety units and if they give selling units, then you should be able to find the break-even point units, right? So they can test other way around also for any of this equation. So that is important point. It is not must for them to ask the exact same thing. For an example, let's say I told you in the fifth one, this is sixth, right? Yeah. Fifth one I told you the profit thing, right? So with the 10,000 profit, how many units has to be sold? So they can test other way around also. Okay, if they sell this number of units, what is the profit? So what you have to do, you have to put the same formula and you will fill the quantity or units, and you have to find the, you have to subject the profit and find the answer, right? So we have just 6 or 7 you know, the formulas, and you're going to apply that and find the answers. Clear? Right. So this is the 6th one, margin of safety. The 7th one is other formulas to find profit, right? Generally this one, the last one, we use in MCQ questions, not in part 2, because when they are asking part 2 question, we could be able to get the answer using the basic 6 formulas. What are those? First one is income statement, right? Second one is C, fine, CS ratio, right? Then 4th one is break-even point, 5th one is with the profit, 6th one is what you call margin of safety. The other formulas generally we used to find the answer in MCQ, but it is not must, like, you know, to use that only in the MCQs, right? I suggest to use the basic formulas, which is the first 6, to find the answers. If you couldn't be able to do that, if you couldn't be able to find the answer, then we go with the 7th one, which is categorized as others, to find the same profit. So first one, we have profit equals to margin of safety units into contribution per unit. Right? So why I put contribution? If you put selling price, what you will get? You have margin of safety units, and if you multiply by selling price, what you get? Margin of safety value. I told you that margin of safety value is not profit, because margin of safety is the gap between the break-even point and the selling price. So that units will have selling price and variable cost as well, no fixed cost. Why? Because fixed cost is already fully covered at the point of break-even point. So additional units above break-even point will have variable cost. Always, because variable cost is associated with the product, right? Is related to the product, right? Therefore, into say contribution means selling price minus what you call variable cost is contribution. So if you multiply by selling what you call contribution, you will get the profit. So this is why we have the word contribution, because we are using that word in almost all the formulas, right? So that is the importance in the word of contribution. So you should know what does contribution mean. It is just selling price minus variable cost, because there's no definition for the contribution other than that, right? So margin of safety units into contribution per unit is equals to what you call profit. And the second one, profit equals to. So I put margin of safety units. No? So I'm going to try margin of safety value. Margin of safety into what? So if I put margin of safety units, so into C is equals to profit. So if I put margin of safety value, to get the same profit, by what you had to multiply? There's no changes. There's no changes in the formula. Actually, we are using the same exact formula, but you have to get the same, you have to get the profit which you found from the first equation, right? Instead of margin of safety units, I put margin of safety value. How I got the margin of safety value? Units into margin of safety units into selling price, right? So I can say this one is like margin of safety units into selling price, right? Right? Value. To get the same answer, I am multiplying by selling price here, right? To get the same profit, what I can do? If I do like this, is that okay? COS mean what? CS ratio. Is that okay? Yes. Why? Here I use margin of safety units. Here I am using margin of safety value. So units to value by what you are multiplying? By selling price, right? SP selling price. So if you multiply by selling price, right, and if you divide back again by selling price, means selling price. If you divide back by selling price, you get the same answer, right? Because this SP and this SP, if you are multiplying by SP, again you are dividing by SP, means selling price, then you get the same answer. So actually you are using the same formula again. Why we are having two formulas? Because in some question they will give margin of safety value directly. They don't give the margin of safety units. So if they give margin of safety value, you should know to find the profit, right? So this is the second equation. So I just explained this, like how we got the margin of safety value here, right? But into CS ratio. What is the important point in CS ratio? Same thing. If CS ratio, I would do CS ratio, right? If CS ratio is 40, if CS ratio is 40%, we have to use what? 0.4, right? Exactly what? Same as what? When you're calculating the break-even point value, right? So this is the other formulas to find the profit. Very rarely they test this. There's a question where in one past paper they ask you, they requested in the requirement, they clearly mention using the margin of safety to find the profit. So if they mention like that, you have to go with this formula, because our normal profit calculation, how? Units equals to TFC plus profit over C, right? So if they ask you to find using the margin of safety, you can't use that formula because there's no margin of safety in that formula. So if they ask such a thing, you should show in this way. So that is the other formulas we have. So these are the formulas we have, and we have one more thing, which is about variable cost, That 8th set is not related to the all other 7 set, because all other 7 set is related to part 2 question generally, and those are the formulas we have. 8th one is about variable cost. I would say about variable cost, right? So why I am having this number set? Because then you know, right? There are only 8 set of things you should know. And one more thing you should understand, what is that? How to find the variable cost, and what does variable cost mean? What is it? It is related to the output, not with the days or something. So those are the things actually you should know. It's very, I would say like not a huge chapter for A levels. We have only few things, but they can test in different ways. Fine. Variable cost. So I would say like this, like let's say I had 1000 units. My total cost is 50,000. I had 2000 units. My total cost is, let's say, 90,000. Right? So this is total cost, right? TC means total cost. Total cost includes what? Variable cost and the fixed cost. So this change, so my units was 1000, now it is 2000. My total cost was 50,000, now it is 90,000. The change in total cost is because of what? Because of what cost? Because of fixed cost or variable cost? Obviously because of the variable cost. Why? Fixed cost won't change, right? Fixed cost is what? It is fixed. So if it is 1000 units or 2000 units, any number of units, it is fixed. Right? So this is the change, right? The change is because of what? Variable cost. So I can say like this, right? Generally, change in total cost equals to change in total VC. For this question to find variable cost, I would say variable cost equals to delta TC over delta units. So now 40,000 and 1000. So my VC is 40. This is a question they used to test. Like if you take like last 6 papers in MCQ, at least 3 or 4 papers they would have tested. Because this is one of the MCQ questions generally, not in the part 2. So this point is important. Why? Because total cost change in total cost obviously won't include fixed cost, because the definition of fixed cost is what? The cost which won't change with the units, right? So total cost, delta total cost equals to delta TVC. Therefore, I can have this formula, VC per unit, variable cost per unit, equals to delta TC or delta quantity. So in this question it is 40. Now tell me what is fixed cost, how to find fixed cost. If we apply this to any one of these, let's say 40 per unit, I have 1000 units. So what is my total variable cost at 1000 units? 40,000, right? So what is my fixed cost? 10,000. So I'm going to check this again. At 2000 units, what is my variable cost, total variable cost? 2000 per unit is 40, so 80,000. So 80,000 is your total variable cost. Fixed is still what? 10,000. So now you know, right? Okay, still the fixed is what? It won't change, right? It won't change with the number of units. So that is 8th one. So I just show this separately. Why? Because now chapter is almost completed. We have 8 set of things in this chapter, and that's it. What is the trigger in the chapter? What is the trigger they test in the question? To find variable cost and fixed cost. Whenever they are giving question, they normally have some issues, have some difficulty for you when you are trying to find the variable cost and fixed cost. Once it is done, it is the full marks question. Very rarely students would make mistake, because the first part, because if you do it correctly, right, find variable cost and fixed cost correctly, then just applying that and find the answers whatever you want, right? So you know, spend some time and find the variable cost and fixed cost correctly, because when you're trying to apply that in any formulas, and if you're finding the answer in decimal, obviously you know that your answer is wrong, because you are talking about the units, right? You're talking about some units, product. So it cannot be in what you call in decimal generally, right? So you know, those things you should understand, right? So this is the entire chapter. We have 8 things, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give some question in the next video, and I explain the graphical part of this chapter. We have 3 graphs, that is again generally the test in MCQs, right? I'll explain that also in the next video. So in this video I covered almost like 70% of the chapter, which have all the formulas, right? Thank you guys.